I was enjoying a sunny day in my backyard when my neighbor Karen unexpectedly showed up demanding that I put my dogs down. She accused me of being a bad neighbor and threatened to call animal control on my dogs. I refused and attempted to prove to her that my dogs weren't doing anything wrong. Here's how it all went down. I was in my backyard with my two dogs, Max and Luna, enjoying the sunny day. Max was about 5 years old and Luna was just 3. They were both loving life, running around the yard, playing fetch and barking as dogs do. I was soaking up the sun, watching them, and enjoying the peace and quiet. Suddenly, I heard a loud voice coming from my neighbor's yard. I looked over and saw Karen, my middle-aged neighbor, standing in my backyard uninvited. She had always had an issue with my dogs barking, but I didn't understand why she was suddenly in my backyard. She started yelling at my dogs to stop barking, which only made them bark louder. I came outside to see what was going on, and she immediately started yelling at me, telling me that my dogs were disturbing her peace and demanding that I put them down. I tried to explain that my dogs were not vicious and that they were only barking because they were playing or excited, but Karen refused to listen. She accused me of being a bad neighbor and threatened to call animal control on my dogs. She said that she had the right to live in peace and quiet and that my dogs were disrupting her life. I tried to remain calm and explain to Karen that my dogs were not vicious and that they were just playing and barking out of excitement. I also told her that they weren't breaking any laws and that she had no right to come into my backyard and demand that I put them down. Karen was adamant that I put them down, but I refused. She kept escalating the situation, telling me that I was a bad neighbor and that she would call animal control if I didn't comply. She was so angry that I thought she was going to come after me. At this point, I had had enough. I told her that she was wrong and that she needed to calm down. I pulled out my phone and started to look up facts about dog behavior, trying my best to prove to her that my dogs weren't disturbing her peace. Karen seemed to be taken aback by this. She was getting angrier and angrier as I refused to put my dogs down. Her face was flushed and she was practically spitting with rage. "You're being unreasonable," I told her. "My dogs aren't doing anything wrong. They're just barking. It's what dogs do." Karen scowled at me. "It's disrupting my peace," she spat. "I have the right to live in peace and quiet, and your dogs are preventing me from doing that." I rolled my eyes. "That's ridiculous," I said. "You don't have the right to demand that I put my dogs down just because they're barking. They're not hurting anyone." Karen glared at me. "I'll call animal control," she threatened. "They'll take care of your dogs." I shook my head. "You're not going to do that," I said firmly. "My dogs are my pets. They're part of my family. I'm not going to let you take them away from me," Karen sneered. "You're being selfish," she spat. "You care more about your dogs than you do about your neighbors." "That's not true," I protested. "I care about my neighbors. That's why I'm trying to explain to you that my dogs aren't doing anything wrong." Karen shook her head. "I don't want to hear it," she said. "I'm going to call animal control, and they're going to take your dogs away from you." I could feel my blood boiling. I couldn't believe how entitled Karen was acting. "You're not going to take my dogs away from me," I said through gritted teeth. "I won't let you." Karen smirked. "We'll see about that," she said. Karen's smirk made me even angrier. I was determined to prove to her that my dogs were not a nuisance and that she was wrong for coming into my backyard and threatening to take them away from me. I started to explain to her how dogs think and act and why they bark. I provided her with facts about dog behavior and explained that my dogs were not breaking any laws. But Karen refused to listen. "You're just trying to get out of this," she said, her voice icy. "You don't care about your neighbors. You're just trying to save your own skin." I shook my head. "That's not true," I said. "I care about my neighbors, and I'm trying to explain to you that my dogs aren't doing anything wrong. They're just being dogs." Karen sighed and looked away. "I just want peace and quiet," she said quietly. "That's all I want." I nodded. "I understand that," I said. "And I'm sorry if my dogs are disrupting your peace, but they're not doing anything wrong. And you don't have the right to come into my backyard and demand that I put them down." Karen's shoulders slumped and she seemed to deflate. "You're right," she said quietly. "I was wrong for coming into your backyard and demanding that you put your dogs down. I'm sorry." I was taken aback by her sudden apology. "It's okay," I said, my voice softening. "I forgive you. Let's just try to figure out a way to coexist as neighbors." Karen nodded, and we sat down to talk about how we could handle my dogs in the future. We discussed ways to keep them quiet, and Karen even offered to watch my dogs when I went out of town. After a few hours of talking, we finally reached an agreement. Karen apologized again, and we shook hands before she left. I was left baffled by the entire experience, though. How could people demand so much? I'll never know. I just hope that I give enough peace and quiet for that Karen to be satisfied with. I wouldn't want her coming back on my backyard again. Great story. I can totally relate to that experience. It's so frustrating when people think they have the right to demand things from you without any regard for your own feelings. Glad they were able to stand up for herself and reach an agreement with Karen in the end. Years ago, my dad met Harold through mutual friends, and they hit it off. I was 18 and in college when I met him, and we never had a close relationship. However, he always seemed to think of himself as a family friend and was extremely infantilizing and condescending towards me. Every time I saw him, I tried to tell myself it wasn't that bad, only for him to prove me wrong less than a minute later. Harold would disrespect my boundaries, say things like, "You're not 19, you're a baby," while I was talking to other people, and patronize me, my education or my hobbies whenever he had the chance. He always noticed that annoyed me, to which he'd playfully ask if I hated him. I always said no, but only for my father's sake. The final straw came the day Harold interrupted a barbecue to say, "I really like you, even though you're an impolite brat." I was 20 years old. I had been quiet all day, working on a paper during the barbecue, but replied patiently and politely whenever anyone addressed me. Even if that hadn't been the case, I knew he didn't have the right to talk to me like that. After that, I started making an effort to avoid any events I knew he would be attending. Yesterday was my father's girlfriend's birthday. They threw a small lunch party at my dad's apartment. I went there with my fiancée and our 6-month-old son. Harold was there. I hadn't seen him in months, but he still talked to me as if I was a child. Never mind that I'm engaged, a mother, and 26 years old. I spent the whole party ignoring his helpful advice about me being too young to get married or be a mom. It helped that most of the other guests seemed to disagree with him. My baby spent most of the afternoon sleeping. There's a bassinet in my old room. He woke up hungry, so I went to breastfeed him and excused myself from the party for a while. I got back to jokes and comments, all from Harold, about how I was probably struggling if my son was managing to leech me away for so long. He went on to interrupt a conversation I was having with another of my dad's friends to question pretty much everything about my parenting. He doesn't even have custody of his daughter, by the way, and to make more comments about my age. I decided I couldn't take it anymore after he asked if I thought about giving my baby up for adoption. I got my son and told my fiancé we were leaving. We said goodbye to everyone except Harold. When we got to the door, Harold came to ask why we were leaving. I tried to make up an excuse, but he kept trying to make us stay. After a small back and forth, he jokingly asked if I hated him, and this time I said, "Yes, I do. Can we go now?" He didn't say anything, and we left. On the way home, my fiancé said he was proud of me. My father called this morning to say the opposite, and we had a small fight, but ultimately decided to drop the subject. I'm sure this isn't over, but if it keeps going, it won't be because of me. This is far from my proudest moment, and a small part of me regrets it, but I'm done with that guy. I'll start by addressing the possible assumption that Harold has feelings for me. I really don't think that's the case. His comments always came out as annoying and condescending, but never sexual. But I will say that your comments scared me, and the fact that the general consensus was, "Forget Harold," was heartwarming. I also want to add that, while I did regret what I said a little bit, I never doubted I had done the right thing. I think most of my regret came from the fact that my 8 years of keeping the peace were over. It took some time for the relief to sink in. Truth be told, I've been wanting to do this since the barbecue incident, which was when I went from, "I don't like that guy," to, "I can't stand that guy." My father called Harold the day after I made my previous post. When confronted about the adoption comment, he tried to twist it as him being genuinely concerned about me being a mom so soon, and that he didn't think I knew what I was doing. He did apologize to my father. I don't buy any of that. The next day, my dad told me about the call. He said I should forgive Harold for what he thought was an honest misunderstanding. He also told me I should apologize too, since I had overreacted by telling Harold I hated him for such a small reason. Many of Harold's past comments were made with my father close by. It often happened in the middle of conversations with other people, so he would be too distracted to register them. He also would not notice them most of the time. My dad does not pay enough attention to anything that does not either concern or anger him, and he will most likely forget it until he gets angry at something else later anyway. He's like a jerk. We also have different definitions of what's offensive, so he would never think they were a big deal. I told my father that I wasn't exaggerating when I said I disliked Harold, and that the adoption comment was far from being the only reason. I listed most of the condescending treatment and comments I could remember, including the ones from the party. He didn't remember any of them. I made it very clear that I had disliked Harold for years prior to the party, and that I had nothing to apologize for. I then stated that I'm no longer coming to any events Harold is invited to. My father doesn't need to stop being friends with him, or even stop inviting him to things, but he can no longer expect me to show up as well. I will ask him beforehand, and if he lies, I'll leave. My father called me dramatic, but I pointed out that I've been avoiding Harold for 6 years now, and no one even noticed, so it clearly wasn't a problem. I've only seen him a handful of times since the barbecue incident, and only twice for more than a few minutes. The lunch party last week, and another party back when I was pregnant. It obviously didn't ruin my father's life. I'm not obliged to like his friends any more than he's obliged to like mine. There was some back and forth, but he agreed to my terms. We spoke yesterday about something else, and he mentioned Harold was upset. I ignored that. I'm not going no contact with my father. Yes, I'm very well aware he's a jerk, and I came really close to cutting times with him in the last few years, but I ultimately decided it wouldn't really fix anything. Maintaining my relationship with him has gotten a lot easier since I moved out, as we only see each other a couple of times a month. He gets frustrated that I don't call or text much, but doesn't complain about it anymore. I don't see the point in going no contact with someone who no longer has any say in how I live my life. I'd rather just take note of what my father did wrong when I was growing up, and then make sure to raise my own kid differently. He's on thin ice, though, and has been for some time. He's not allowed to babysit, mostly because I don't trust him to spend more than an hour alone with a baby without falling asleep on the couch. I began pushing for him to start doing therapy back when I got pregnant, and he finally got started back in June. His behavior around me and my younger sister, who still lives between our very divorced parents, has improved a lot since, and I've made it clear to him that he won't be allowed near my son if he stops attending. This is the first time in my life my father has improved his behavior. It's hard to be hopeful, but I'm trying. And if I ever do go no contact with my father, it won't be because of Harold. So that's it. Overall, I'm glad I don't have to deceive anyone anymore. My relationship with my father is rocky, but I won't dwell on it. My main responsibilities are my son, my fiance, and my job, and that's not changing anytime soon. It takes a lot of strength to stand up for yourself, especially when it's someone close to your family. Good job to him! I am part of a local donation group, so every now and then I get asked to help with clothes donations. Someone passes away or downsizes, and I will help wash, fold, sort, and deliver the clothes to various free stores. Sometimes, if we are notified of someone in the community in need, we will deliver essentials like winter or kids' clothing to their house. We are just a group within the community. There is no religious, political, or ulterior motive. We just spread extra through the community as needed as discreetly as possible to help out. This particular situation just confuses me, and I'm still trying to figure out how it escalated the way it did. So a few days ago, there was a fire in our community which left 3 families displaced. We collected what we could in the sizes they needed, and off we went. We don't ask for anything in return other than knowing the families are a little better off. We always apologize and explain that while they may not be the styles they're accustomed to as donated clothing, at least they are clean and warm. If they had specific needs, they could let a member of the group know, and we would do what we can. A lot of our collected items belong to other families whose children outgrew the items. It's anonymous and a way for our more comfortable community members to help out others within the community. It's one thing I love about my community. People don't hesitate to help where needed. I was given an address and headed out as usual. I pulled in, got the bags, coats, and toys to the door, and knocked. After that, I'm not sure what to think. It started off as it usually does. There was a mother and 3 children, so I explained that there are 3 bags of clothing in the sizes submitted, and a box of age-appropriate toys, just like with the other families. I thought I heard wrong when she said she preferred my coat and just said, "What?" She called me rude and told me again, "This stuff is okay, but I want the coat you're wearing." When I told her, "No, I'm sorry, but I just bought this coat," she got angry and accused me of picking through donation bags for the good stuff. I've never run into this issue before. None of the group members are well off. In fact, that's why we do what we do. Because life is hard here and we believe in sharing what we have as a community. We collect good quality items from those with extra and distribute them freely to those who need them or have specific needs. Sometimes we all take items from our own closets if they're needed more elsewhere. Last year, we raised funds to help purchase a wheelchair-accessible vehicle for a family. The year before, it was a young family whose matriarch was diagnosed with terminal cancer. This year's cause is to build 4 tiny homes for the homeless in our community to use as needed. Our goal is to provide stability so they can successfully reintegrate during and after addiction rehabilitation. We all do what we can to try to help, basically. It's a hard world to feel alone in. Now, my coat is expensive, $250, but I've also saved gift cards for 2 years and anxiously watched for post-season sales before finally taking the plunge and getting it for 75% off. Maybe I messed up by wearing it on this errand? I don't know. After I said no, this is my coat a second time, she started yelling at me. I just left the bags on the doorstep and drove away. Today, I woke up to a lot of messages from the group asking me why I refused to give a mother any winter coats and why I left everything at the end of the driveway, allegedly in a ditch. They weren't just questioning me, most were downright accusatory, and some were just borderline mean. It's the kind of day that makes me feel like giving up on trying to make the world a better place. I've been in a situation where I needed help before, and people helped me just like this. I know what it feels like to rely on others, so I try to be compassionate and understanding without being condescending or pitying. I don't often talk about what I do because nobody needs to know what came from where or who is getting what. It's just paying it forward. I do this because it's been done for me, and it's the right thing to do. It's that simple. But after today, I don't even want to reply to anyone. It's not just that woman. It's the texts that are getting kinda nasty at this point. It's these people obviously talking about me behind my back. It's how quick they were to assume I must have done this. I'm not sure if I want to do this anymore after all this. I've been part of this for 5 years and have never had a complaint before. I feel betrayed by people I thought were my friends. It just all feels gross, dramatic, and depressing now, and that's not how it's supposed to feel. The day of the meeting came, and as I parked, there were a couple that stopped to say hi, but the majority of the board did not acknowledge me. My accuser, though, she had a great laugh at my expense and literally taunted me in front of the others on the way in. "Oh, here for more, are you? Guess you didn't get enough of me yet," and blows me a kiss. She showed up with the president, which I feel is relevant, especially since she ran home. The meeting started at 6 p.m. I was not allowed to sit at the table until the issue was brought up. I sat alone for over 45 minutes. Finally, someone peeked outside at 6:53 to see if I was still there and called me in. My accuser wasn't there. I sat down, and the first thing said to me was, "Well, we may have made a mistake," followed by a big flowery apology that smelled of insincerity. "You know that when a complaint comes in, we have to investigate it," she said. At that point, I exploded. I told them there's a massive difference between investigating and outright accusing, and that I didn't appreciate how their ineptitude at leading a board nearly derailed the whole organization and just put a really bad light on what we were doing. She said, "By unanimous decision, we've decided not to accept your resignation. Welcome back." I've likely been this confused before, but I don't remember when. I was expecting this to be much harder. I had a factual speech ready and everything, but when I walked in, it was just, "We oopsied. Oh well, tee-hee. Well, that's unfortunate that you refuse to accept it because it's given, and I'm not rescinding it. I'm out, and it seems you all know exactly why. For those who have reached out to me, I'll consider your offer of leading this board, but at this time, I'm not comfortable with the lack of trust and transparency I'm seeing," and I left. My phone has been blowing up all night. I meant to update immediately, but it just kept ringing and dinging. I don't even know how so many found out, but I had over 30 calls and just as many texts and social media messages. So what happened while I was waiting outside? My accuser decided to get on something pre-meeting and acted like a wild animal at one point. I'm told it was so bad that the police and child protection services were called by 4 out of 5 ladies present, and when told they were called, my accuser took off running home. That's a whole other story. I'm told the kids are now safe. The versions I'm hearing are surprisingly similar for once. So I'm going to tell you the events as I was told. The president's husband is apparently an addict who gets his stash from the sister-in-law/accuser. I'm not clear on the details, but I'm told blackmail was involved. Common word says she threatened to spill the beans on the husband. There's a rumor he is also sleeping with the sister-in-law, but this is not confirmed. It's been going around for the better part of a year now. Maybe I should start listening to more rumors because I had no idea. The accuser started off normal, if twitchy. She went to the washroom, and things allegedly went sideways not long after she came out. At one point, she was laying on the floor, slithering and grunting like an animal. I wish I could have seen it, but I'm kinda glad I didn't. When the accuser left, it swayed the remaining 2 votes my way. There was a discussion on how to handle me where the president just said she'll follow the board on the vote after they shot down her suggestion that the complaint still be addressed. The way she glared at me when I came in, yes, wearing my coat, tells me she was not happy about it either. The vote was unanimous to keep me. I did not wish to stay after all that. Tomorrow they have an open board meeting to tell people what happened, as transparency is ironically a promise we made to the community, so they know exactly who and what they're supporting. I won't be there, but a lot of angry and confused people will be. I'm glad I'll be missing it, but I have a feeling I'll hear all about it. I am told there will be some calling for president's resignation. We shall see, I guess. I started this feeling lower than low. Tonight I'm surrounded by positivity, and I feel good about this decision. Is this karma? It feels like karma. Steps are already being taken to form what we will call the Fringe Farm. We will collect fresh farm goods donated by local farmers and deliver to homes that need a little extra, focusing on those that live between communities and people new to rural life. Eventually, I hope to offer clothing and household goods, but I need to find a source outside the community, so I'm not taking from the original group. I also have a preliminary board comprised of 3 of the 5 members of the original board. I've told them they have to finish their term at the group because they do damn good work, and it's not fair to those that need them to just walk away. Hypocritical? Maybe. But I refuse to torpedo the group. 2 still submitted resignations because they're just floored by that last meeting. Theirs was depending upon mine, so their exit meetings are being scheduled for next week. Because they no longer have a secretary to record minutes, I'm being asked to. I'm also being asked to submit my name for president should the current one agree to resign. I haven't decided if I will. I feel that will come across as petty, and to be honest, it's no longer my business. Weeks have passed and it's been interesting. The old group has dissolved. Nobody wanted to work with the president anymore after all that. They held an emergency meeting to try to figure out why most of the board submitted their resignations, and it was a mess of the president accusing the remaining board members of conspiring against her, which caused the last remaining board members to also resign over time. My new board, Fringe Farm, is thriving. We've taken over collection and distribution in our area, and 2 others as we've merged with 2 other small groups to tap more resources. Imagine my shock and surprise when the original offender called my treasurer and asked to be put on the list. Of course, we did help her, but we took the secretary's minivan and all 7 of us went as a group. When we got there, it was the former president's husband that answered the door. Our first task was to have an ironclad board policy that states anyone accused of wrongdoing will be spoken to privately by the president and vice president. Neither are me. I prefer to work behind the scenes, prior to anything else. I'm hearing rumors that the former board president, P, isn't doing well. When the shit hit the fan, her husband left her for sister-in-law, and they've been methed up ever since. I honestly feel bad for her. They have no kids and now it's just her. We are having a meeting next week, and I believe we are going to invite P onto our board in a non-authority role. After hearing everything that went down afterward, she's had to get a job, and they're currently trying to sell their house amid divorce proceedings, so I guess the rumor he was getting a little more than drugs from sister-in-law was accurate after all. Rumors say P is in massive debt thanks to her husband's addiction. I don't think she should have to go through it all alone. I also think her situation was causing her an immense amount of stress, and that's why everything happened as it did. She knows she messed up. There's no need to rub salt in her wounds. It's amazing to see the power of kindness and understanding in action, and how even after a tough situation, this person was willing to reach out and help someone who had wronged them. It's a great reminder that we can all choose to be kind no matter what. Keep up the great work.